So this is Snap Take 4.
Woo.
Will we start?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is a journey from Dublin 8, where I'm from and you live, to Dublin 2, where Project Art Centre is, and
Via the Liberties.
via the Liberties.
Yeah.
And we're going to start with a photograph of photographs.
Yeah. I found it today and I just thought it was kind of cool.
Yeah.
I've been taking photographs, but I've also been taking photographs of photographs for a while now. So I thought it might be a nice way to start the video.
Yeah. So that must be one of the first set of photographs you made, was it?
No, definitely. It was actually one of the first set of photographs that I printed. So I printed them in the school darkroom.
Wow.
Actually, that's Rhiannon Clark from DYT
Oh, amazing.
in that picture.
It's mad that...
Which is how I was able to date it back to DYT.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's mad that I was in DYT with your sister and you were in DYT with my sister.
Yeah.
Generational.
Yeah. Yeah, Grace and Emma.
Ah. So, where did you grow up, Louis?
I kind of grew up in a few different places. Born in Blanchardstown, Dublin 15,
Yeah.
but went to school over in Finglas direction, basically, Glasnevin.
Okay.
My mum was from Finglas. Dad's from Ringsend, but no, my mum was from Finglas, and I went to a primary school over at the back of the Met Office, actually.
Oh, wow. What? That must have been very awkward.
Yeah, it was like a commute, like to primary school.
Okay.
Yeah, or actually remember getting the bus quite often.
Wow.
On these rainy, miserable days. But yeah, there was a school bus, and then I think the school bus stopped, and then they got us these bus passes for Dublin bus.
Okay.
And then yeah, and I think my mum got a car after that, and when we're going to secondary school again over that side of the city, and then it was a combination of getting lifts and maybe getting the bus back home, or train into town and the bus home, or something like that.
And why did you go to school so far away from where you lived?
Well, the primary school was non-religious.
Okay.
So it was really important to my parents to send me to a non-religious school, so the church wouldn't be interfering with their kids.
That's amazing that she had that foresight, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, at the time, I didn't really know I didn't really understand the significance of being raised without religion.
Yeah.
I just thought it was a choice. I didn't realise how radical it was. But now, looking back, it's kind of incredible that my parents were able to do it.
Yeah. And you were also raised vegetarian as well, weren't you?
Yeah. Again, and Emma, my sister, raised vegetarian, but they're 15 years older.
Yeah.
So, whatever about me being raised in the 90s as a vegetarian, Emma being raised in the 70s as a vegetarian is something completely different.
It's kind of unheard of, like.
Yeah, it's I've met one other person. I can't remember who they are, but I remember meeting them, and it's again similar situation that they were raised in Ireland as a vegetarian, and they're a similar age to me, and neither of us had ever met another person
Who'd been...
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
That's amazing. You could do a whole project on your life on buses, couldn't you?
Yeah, because after school then I went to Dunleary, of course, to study photography, and that was I was telling you the other day, was 2 hours there and 2 hours back every day.
That's
so
unbelievable.
4 hours commuting to get to college. Actually, somebody drove in every day from Laois, and it took them 1 hour and 20 minutes to drive in from Laois, and I was 2 hours on the bus getting in from Blanche. Yeah.
That's mad. That's mad. And did you have to work through college?
Yeah. I worked in a shop called the Camera Centre
Okay.
The branch I worked in closed down recently.
Ah.
Yeah, which was a bit sad to see. But yeah, no, I worked, God, 3 or 4 days a week.
And went to
Yeah,
lectures and did projects and all
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. It was actually it was more like 2 full days and 2 half days. So yeah,
Okay, okay.
yeah.
And was there a choice around that? Like, did you?
Not really. I mean, some people that I studied with, their parents were able to, rent accommodation close to college or kind of subsidize their income or whatever. But that wasn't an option for me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Which was fine. But what used to really piss me off, it was so fucking annoying. Like if you look at the history of photography, there's this kind of figure called the flaneur, and it's basically
Yeah.
this kind of like dandy, kind of independently wealthy person who goes around taking pictures. And there's people in my year who didn't have to work, and at the weekends they would just spend their time taking photographs. And I remember one day one of my tutors was looking at my pictures, and they said, "Why don't you do what this person does and take pictures at the weekend?" I was like, "Cause I have to work."
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
it just, and even when I explained I had to work, they were like, "Well, have you considered not working?" It wasn't. Yeah,
Yeah.
it just didn't compute for them.
That there was another life being lived out
Yeah.
there. Yeah, yeah. I had to work. I went as a mature student to college, but I worked in A&E at night.
You went to Trinity?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I worked nights in A&E at one stage, and at about 3 or 4 in the morning, I'd take my books out, if it got quiet. But I mean, look, that was where all the waiting lists and stuff, and the hours wait for patients, But yeah, it was mad. So there was no real time for extras in college,
Yeah.
It was very much like get in, learn the stuff, get out, go to work.
Do your exams and
Yeah,
pass.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Trinity's just another kettle of fish as well.
Trainers for winners.
That's where you're from.
That's me.
Yeah.
Just right around the corner there. That's where I grew up. And actually found a photograph the other day of our view from the balcony.
Which is the other side of that Guinness building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of unreal, isn't it? Because I didn't know that was our view. You know what I mean? I didn't remember that as the view.
Yeah.
Now, we would have probably spent more time looking out onto the Pimlico side, through the sitting room window. But that's taken from our balcony. So what you can mostly see is the kind of Guinness or Diageo now industrial complex, and that's what we looked at every day.
It's such a weird photograph, though. It's almost like an accidental photograph. It doesn't look like it's a picture of anything.
It's very odd, but there's a series of them, and the subject of the photograph is supposed to be this parade. But in this particular one, all you can see is this massive industrialisation, And that's where my granddad worked. He worked for Guinness's, so he used to come up on his break sometimes up to the flat,
I have a picture of my granddad, actually.
Ah.
He's from Sheriff Street.
Ah.
But I find it funny, like when the train or the dart started going to Sheriff Street.
Yeah.
Just people's reaction about like, oh, I wouldn't get off at Sheriff Street, would you?
Are you serious?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It hasn't changed that much either, has it? And then with the IFSC built up all around the community, it's very hard to maintain community right now in the city, I think I was kind of lucky growing up on the Liberties at that time, when I could still afford to live there, like.
The famous tree.
That's the special tree, featuring in art since 2014.
Here and now.
Here and now. I think why it's so special is that I would hazard a guess that is the oldest tree in Dublin 8 outside the Phoenix Park.
It's probably about 80 years old.
It has to be about that,
at
doesn't
least,
it?
I guess, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, inevitably, they'll probably have to take it down for structural reasons, but at one stage I thought I might chain myself to it if that ever happened, because I love it so much, And there wasn't that much greenery around us, that was like, that's a significant tree in the urban inner city, like it's kind of miraculous.
Took a picture of Grace there once. It was Actually, it was to make up for a bad picture I took of her.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, I went back when I thought I could take headshots. I quickly realised I wasn't very good at taking headshots. Um, yeah, took a bad studio picture of Grace, and then we're like, okay, actually, I don't like taking studio photographs. You don't like being in the studio. Where are we more comfortable? And Grace was like, flats.
Yeah,
Yeah,
perfect.
it's like grand. Yeah, I'll meet
Yeah.
you there.
And my school is literally just down there. It's actually where Palace Studios is now.
Oh yeah, which is I still don't really believe that, to be honest.
No, it's true.
Yeah,
That was my
yeah,
school.
I had a studio in there.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And you had an exhibition there once, didn't
Yeah,
you?
yeah,
yeah. This is not a picture of the school now, but this will just signify that I didn't go to a non-religious school. So that's a very odd picture of the May Day procession, which used to happen every May for May is the month of Mary, with the little hymn and all the little girl children would have to dress up as brides of Christ and parade around the neighbourhood. And the only reason I know it's not communion, well, obviously my age, but we're all wearing black shoes, so it was specifically for the May Day that we had to dress
That's
up
a
like this.
distinction between real communion and not real.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was like a procession for honouring Mary, the Virgin Mother, every May, and that's what we had to do. And it still feels quite bizarre to me
Yeah.
that's what happens, you know.
And when you got a bit older in that school, was there any recognition, or like, did you know that you were queer later on?
I didn't know when I was in school, I don't think. I mean, I knew I was different. I always felt different. And whether that was, I don't know, whether that was me
Being an
family
artist
background or being an artist
Yeah,
or being queer or whatever, but I don't really, like, there was mention of being queer in school. And it was obviously an all-girls school I went to. It was the nuns. And so there were girls in older years, and they would be called lesbian or gay or queer or something like that, with the kind of homophobic undertones, but never, I mean, look, it's all relative, but it was a soft homophobia, if that's possible. But like it was, yeah, that was the only kind of acknowledgement of female queerness that I experienced up until that point, you know, up until the point I went to DYT probably. But then, you know, one of my favourite things post the referendum is seeing lesbians holding hands on the street now, which you just didn't see. You just didn't see that in Ireland. Like,
Yeah.
you know, you might see the odd male couple, you know,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you didn't see women holding hands. And now,
Well, I mean, like, I guess historically they've kind of been forgotten about. You know, even
Yeah.
in, you know, when they started bringing in anti-homosexual laws, they just seem to forget that, you know, women might have a sexuality and could potentially be lesbian
exactly.
together. Do
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, it was
like
alien concept.
the only
Yeah.
form of sexuality was if you had a penis.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even like representations of female sexuality on film or on stage or something like that, it tends, like the joke that me and Kieran often say is that, like, if you see an actor touching their calf, you know, that means they're aroused or whatever. You know what I mean? There's no, it's very it's very hidden, you know.
Mhm.
And now that's obviously changing, you know. Yeah, but I didn't really understand or begin to understand my sexuality till DYT years later, like years later. Here's a picture of you, Louis. I know you love getting your picture taken.
That somehow sneaks into your pile of photographs every time. Yeah. No, I mean, we both know I don't like getting my picture taken.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny. It only triggered with me there. You said it earlier on today. That maybe that's why I started taking pictures. But you know, I think it's the timeline of kind of discovering my own sexuality and my own queerness kind of overlaps with when I started taking pictures as well.
Okay.
And I think I was just so uneasy in myself and uncomfortable in my skin. I really hated, I couldn't even walk past a mirror with my eyes open. Like, I hated the sight of myself.
Yeah.
And then the idea of actually taking a picture of myself or being in a picture was just unbearable. But being behind the camera was a bit safer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It creates that distance, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I actually found this picture. It's not a great picture, but it's the first picture I've found of myself with the camera in my hand.
deadly.
It's also the first time I was ever outside of Ireland.
Wow.
Yeah, my parents had done that, that saving scheme for you save £4 and we'll give you £1
Yes.
from the government. Yeah,
Yes.
they did that anyway, and then we were able to go on a holiday afterwards to Italy.
Amazing. And that's a proper camera as well.
It's an SLR, yeah, it's a film SLR. It's actually, it's I remember the brand, it's a Fenix.
Wow.
35mm SLR. So obviously, maybe digital cameras were just coming into use back then. I don't think they were, but film was definitely the medium.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So you were discovering your artist self and your sexuality all in the mix at the same time, like.
I guess so. Yeah.
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 And you were a person in a working class neighbourhood going to art college.
Yeah.
That must have been fun.
Yeah, non-religious vegetarian as well, just to make it extra difficult.
Yeah, there's full on intersectionality going on.
Yeah, yeah. Our mutual favourite wall.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love that on one side you're inside the grounds of the castle, and on the other side you're in the Liberties, at Liberty.
At liberty to trade freely. Yeah.
I just think it's brilliant, and that just that sense of freedom and rebelliousness that is inherent in that kind of narrative, like the story of it.
I learned that from your play.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
My son.
Who was standing on the map?
I think everyone was at one stage. Yeah, but Erica Rowe. Yeah,
Erica, that's right. Yeah.
Of course, we're all consumed by capitalism now anyway, so
it doesn't really matter.
I don't know if that works out. Case in point.
That's a travesty.
It's actually hard to fathom, isn't it, that they've left that building and the fruit market in that state.
Yeah.
Like, I remember being in there as a kid. It was still open on the Francis Street side, and I remember seeing like piles of clothes on tables and shoes and all that kind of stuff. It was just amazing to walk around it.
In the 80s.
Yeah, it would have been the early 80s. Yeah, but my mum brought me in because we used to swim around the corner.
Yeah.
And we'd walk back up that way to Marlborough Lane.
Yeah, I mean, in particular, it's thinking of where they came from and what they meant to working class people in Dublin, and to see how they've just been left to rot, basically.
Literally,
it's beyond heartbreaking. I think it's criminal.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and apparently the fruit market has been sublet for contractors now at the moment as well. And there you go. Happy is the city where citizens obey.
Stamped on the floor of City Hall.
It's hard to believe we've left that stand, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't ever feel to me like the real motto of Dublin.
Everybody's shocked when they hear it.
Yeah, yeah.
I've never heard anybody say, yeah.
Yeah.
I can see that.
That's
grand. Grand. Yeah, cool.
It couldn't have been taken by popular vote. I mean, it just couldn't have,
That speech.
Like, it's hard to believe that that's where Pride used to be.
Because Pride felt, before it really was massive, like, as in before it got to like 150,000 people or whatever.
Amazing.
Pride felt huge.
Yeah.
It really, like, it just felt so enormous. But standing there in Wood Quay, it's tiny.
It's tiny.
It's so small.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how did so much, because it wasn't even just the amount of people, it was the spirit and the emotion, and everything about it was just kind of overflowing.
Yeah.
And it's just incredible that it fit into that space.
Yeah. And that the parade had finished there, like kids, everybody fit into that space, and then Panty's speech, which changed everything really.
It lit a fire, I think, in every single one of us.
Yeah.
It was a real kind of call to arms.
It was totally that, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think everything had kind of stagnated to a certain point,
Yeah.
There didn't seem to be something on the horizon that warranted a level of political pressure. Like it kind of dwindled out or something. And Panty making that speech and that call to arms to get involved and get marriage equality going, and it just changed everything. Like, and I remember the moment.
Yeah, it's just it the air kind of felt charged with something, and everybody was kind of in sync.
Yeah.
You know, it's like that phenomenon in live performance when allegedly like people's heartbeats start to beat in sync.
Yes.
It kind of felt like that.
Yes. Or when women's periods sync up as well.
Yeah.
But that was more instantaneous.
I know less about that.
Or cis women. And it felt like people carried that speech.
Yeah, right to the end.
Yeah. Kind of unbelievable.
I think they were a gay couple on holidays. They were taking a selfie in front of Alan Phelan's sculpture there.
Oh, cool.
But it's about the 1884 Dublin Castle scandal.
Oh, right, okay.
This kind of gay sex scandal between the Irish nationalists and the British occupants
Of the castle.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It's complex, isn't it? Did you tell me that was made out of potatoes as well?
Oh yeah, something like that. It's 3D printed potato starch.
Wow.
I think, and then it's paper mache'd over with paper and glue.
Yeah.
But it's across from the boiler house, which is, I mean, not by design because it's specifically on that plinth.
Yeah.
But it's kind of looking at the origins of the sculpture. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, it's cool. Do you think going to DYT, going to Dublin Youth Theatre, saved your life?
Yeah, in a way. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I went to an unusual school that had some kind of uptake of theatre and music and all of that. So it wasn't like some other kids who really kind of had never experienced anything like it before. But no, for sure. I mean, Dublin Youth Theatre, it's you're kind of like in at the deep end, but the deep end of the best possible place.
Yeah.
You're just in with the best people doing the best things. And Emma, my sister, had been there for years before me, and because of that, had kind of paved the way for me a little bit, because everybody was like, oh wow, like you're Emma's brother, like come hang out with us.
Yeah.
But they were always looking after me like that and looking out for me.
Yeah.
Which it must have been strange, growing up and coming out at such an early age for Emma, and then to see their brother kind of come up in a similar trajectory.
Yeah.
But I found this picture earlier of
wow.
Emma looking out for me.
Ah.
Yeah, I actually remember getting that picture taken, and I just couldn't even look at the camera. Yeah, I was so camera shy.
Well, there was a lot going on, you know what I mean? You were coming out, you were becoming an artist, you were doing all that in a working class setting and trying to navigate all those different... I think that was what was so brilliant about DYT for me, was that it was that mix of people, and it didn't feel segregated, and it didn't feel othering. It felt like community, it was creating community. And
were you in there with Emma?
Yeah. I think I was a year ahead of Emma, and Emma came in a year after me. I think, because I was the same year as Shona. I think that's what happened.
Which is funny, because Grace was a year ahead of me.
No way.
Yeah.
That's mad, isn't it? It's mad that, parallel, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the generational thing, and it was the first place I ever went on a protest. I left DYT with Emma and Shona, and we joined the protest for the X case, which was the girl who was taken off the boat
Yeah.
trying to access an abortion, and she was the same age as me, you know, and I don't think it would have struck me to go on a protest had I not been in Dublin Youth here, you know, in the same way that I wouldn't have been exposed to people being open about their sexuality, and actually people struggling with their sexuality as well in DYT, and the kind of overt politics of it all, you know. It wasn't for nothing, you know. You were doing something for a reason. There was purpose, there was meaning. And Shona was the first person I ever heard talking about the environment in any sort of political way, you know. That, you know, trying to get fair trade off the ground and fair trade coffee, and that was all new to me as a concept, you know. And yeah, I always say it saved my life, you know. It not only gave me access, it gave me kind of solidity, is that a word?
Yeah,
I felt safe, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I had a whole journey after that, but
It feels somewhat significant to end the journey at Project Arts Centre while Emma's show, Domestic Optimism, is still on and the billboard is still up.
it's kind of amazing.
You know, talking about being queer and working class and being an artist. I mean, I don't think there's a better representation of all those three things than this show.
It was really radical work. I loved it. I loved the power of it. I loved the energy from it.
Yeah.
It was really fucking brilliant. Like, before I even got to the film part of it, I was over at the other wall reading, and the music started, and I danced my way around the exhibition. Like, do you know what I mean? Until I got to the film part, and then I sat and listened. Yeah, it was powerful.
Good.
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, look. I think we did well there.